Alright, so we're going to start off this next video, and it's going to be a little bit of intersection from the last episode and also a little bit of history. Is the Flying Eagle, they brought it in to make that small sense as you would have seen in the last video, and it did bring back popularity to the coins. The only problem was the design was not very well designed. It wasn't made well to produce, I should say. And it was very hard to actually mint them because the metal was hard, because it was made out of nickel and copper. Like right here is an example of the Indian you're going to see in this, which is a copper nickel. These were very hard to make. So one of the reasons that they wanted to change the coin was because people didn't like it that much. But it was mostly because they couldn't produce them very well. It was kind of like a trial and error. They wanted to get away from the large cents, but they couldn't quite bring it into the new school without having to do some trial and error. And that's what the Flying Eagle kind of was. It was a trial and error kind of thing. So they brought it into the 1859. They changed it to the Indian head, and they only did that design for 1 year. And then they went to a Variety 2 where they changed the design, which you'll see in the next section on the design, all about what it's going to look like and such. And then in 1864, they realized that a lot of people weren't using the coins. A lot of people weren't using small denominations at all. There was other things involved. They realized people were using smaller, thinner tokens that were made out of bronze. And things, they were using paper, postage stamps, all kinds of things because the war was going on. They realized that the copper nickel wasn't quite going to work anymore, so what they did is they made a third variety, and they changed it to just a bronze composition that was thinner, without the nickel in it. And they were able to change it up a little bit, and they used those all the way up through. And the only other design change to go after that was after Longacre had passed away, who the designer was. William Barber went in 1886, and what they did is they, if you look on here, you'll see like United States of America, and you'll see the date. They kind of they rearranged it a little bit, so there's two varieties in the 1886 variety, but all the other stuff about them is exactly the same. So in the rest of this video, you'll see all these different things that I have kind of mentioned here. Alright, so the design of the Indian head cent. The front of the Indian head cent, as we all know, is what people think is an Indian, but it's actually not. It is Lady Liberty with an Indian headdress. It's also believed they could have been the designer Longacre's form of relative, could have been like his daughter or sister, those kind of things. There's a lot of rumors about that. And it just says United States of America on the top, and on the bottom has the year. Now on the back of the coin, it has a 1 cent in the middle, and it has a wreath, which is kind of more of an oak wreath than the original, and a shield up at the very top of the coin. There's a shield. The first year used a laurel wreath and did not have the shield up there, and the rest of them all had an oak wreath with the shield, so the design all stayed the same. Okay, the designer was James B. Longacre, and we're not going to really give you a ton of detail here because we did for the Flying Eagle one, but he was appointed the director of the chief engraver of the U.S. Mint after Kirsten Gobrecht had passed away, and he was succeeded by William Barber when he passed away in 1869, and He was notable for designing a lot of the smaller coinage, the cents, 2 cent, 3 cent, shield nickels, things like that. If you want a full detail, you can go back to the Flying Eagle video and it will show you all you need to know about Longacre. Okay, now something a little different than what you would have seen on some older things is you never really saw the initials of the designers on coins. They didn't really mark the coin. But it's going to be a little hard to pick up on camera here, but if you take a newer one, they started this in 1864 when they changed the composition. On the ribbon of her hair, of the headdress, they put an L there, and it stood for Longacre, and that was when they added the initial of the designer to the coin, which they never really did that in previous instances. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some of the specifications. There were 2 different varieties when it comes to the composition and the weight and things of that nature. There were really 4 varieties altogether, which we will get into in this video, but there was only 2 major reasonings, and one was from 1859, which is what this was, the 1 year only type. In the 1860s up until 1864, it was the same as the Flying Eagle, so it was 4.67 grams, and it was 88% copper, 12% nickel, and it had a 19 millimeters in diameter, which they all had, and it was also a plain edge, which I'll show you here. This shows you that this is the Indians of that time, and this is like a newer penny, and you'll see the thickness was much thicker on them. Then that's variety 1 and 2. Then we go into variety 3 and 4, which is like what the slabbed one is, and I also got a couple others I can show you here. This is in 1875. And what these were was a 3.11 grams, so the weight was much lower. It was 95% copper, and it was 5% zinc and tin, either mixed together or partially. There's a lot of variations throughout the Lincoln cents especially, but in the Indians it was zinc and copper mixed together. And it has the same thickness, 19 millimeters, and it has a plain edge, but again it's much thinner. They're this thickness instead of the really thick of the other one. Alright, now let's talk about mint marks, because everybody always wants to know with coins, what mint were they minted at and what ones do we need to know. In this case, it's very similar to the Flying Eagle. All copper coins were made at the Philadelphia Mint, so there will be no mint marks, with the exception of the last 2 years of this series, the 1908 and the 1909. They made some in San Francisco, and I do not have an example in front of me to show you, but this is a regular 1908. And where it would be is, if you look on the reverse of the coin, it would be underneath the wreath. So it'd be down at the bottom of the coin on the back. You would see an S near the wreath. They only made 2 years of those, and it was the first mint marks that were ever produced on a cent. Now let's get into mintages, because we all want to know what mintages are of these. We all want to know what ones are hard to get, easy to get. You know, did I find a rare one when I was, you know, at the bank and found one in a roll the other day? Everybody wants to know. And we'll start off with the easy ones. It is not hard to build like a 20-year set of Indian head cents. So we've got, here's a 1904 and here's a 1907. These are fairly decent shape, full Liberty coins. The whole Liberty is on the headdress. From about 1880 up until 1908, all of them are very easy to acquire. They made many millions, of some of them even upwards of 30-40 million. So those ones are not going to be hard to get, especially in circulated conditions. You can find those with no problems at all. Now when it comes to the 1908 and the 1909, the 1909 is a little bit harder to find. Like a Philadelphia is probably about a $10 coin, mostly because as this will tie into the next video in the series, when the Lincoln cent came out, they were recalled and things of that nature, so people could trade them in. So there aren't as, they didn't make as many of them because of the Lincoln. So the 1909, the 1909S, and the 1908S are the key dates that you want to acquire, and also some other low mintages are in the mid 1860s, so like 1866 to around the late 70s, so 1878. Very hard to get a lot of those, and it was mostly because of copper shortages, coin shortages. People were hoarding metals, and that'll tie into some later episodes, and we get into other coins and other tokens and fractional currency and those type of things, which I hope to get to in more episodes down the line. So the last part of this is key dates, mintages that you really want to know. The rarest of the dates is the 1877. It has the lowest mintage. In the two San Francisco mints, the 1908S and the 1909S. And the 1909S is actually given the 1877 a good run for its money in price value. But the 1877 is a little bit of a lower mintage, but it's sometimes not as pricey as the 1909S. Also, other dates that, if you're really trying to build a good set of them, you're going to need the 1859 because that's the key date. A nice intersection is 1864 because they have the copper nickel version. Then they have the bronze switch without the letter, the L on the ribbon, and then they added it, so there's 3 types. And also those dates in the late 1860s through the 1870s, those are all ones you really want to look for. Like this 75 is like a $10 coin. But they can get really, really pricey when you get to some of those early ones. And in the 1870s, there were different ones like bold and, different types of that. It really comes down to just finding the list of all of them to really know what they are.